All right, welcome back, Admin Mastermind and Teach for the Family. Katie, this is a joyful and sad day
Why is it
because
joyful?
joyful because it's summer.
Oh, okay.
Did you already forget?
No, I thought you were like, it's joyful because I'm done with you.
Oh, no, just because we're not on this
Okay,
anymore.
okay.
I still have plenty of time with you. So, no, the joyful part is for most of the admin, it's summertime. I mean, we saw plenty of folks in different backgrounds and settings, and some even were in more casual attire today because they had no students or teachers. But I would say that it was sad because
Yeah.
we are going to take a short break for the summer,
Mhm.
coming back stronger than ever in August. But yeah, I love these sessions and these times with these phenomenal folks. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was good to see everyone last time for this school year. And we had a little bit of fun, okay? So do you wanna have a little fun too with some speed round, would you rather?
Sure, let's do it.
So I'm not gonna go through all the questions, but we had a little bit of fun as far as making sure folks understood that yes, it's summertime, but they also need to finish the tasks in their office and all the district requirements that are on them, but at the same time, they also need to have some fun. So I asked, would you rather spend summer break reading professional development books or binge watching your favorite TV show? What did you choose?
I chose binge watching, but if I had to be honest, and I yelled at you during the meeting, I would pick just books, like not specific type of book. I would pick that outside all day. I actually don't watch a lot of TV in the summer, but I don't want to have to be forced to read professional development in the summer. So any books should be fair game.
So
But
just to
almo
give
I
you a
was a lot of people said professional development
yeah,
books. I felt like
yeah,
that was majority.
majority did. And
Mhm.
just to let everyone understand, going through this, Katie yelled at me quite a bit
I
during
did.
this.
I have a lot of feelings around would you rather, so
This was constructed for you. So, all right,
Mhm.
I'm going to go through another one. Would you rather spend the summer break taking up a new hobby or skill like painting or learning a new language or catching up on all the sleep you missed during the school year?
Okay, this people were definitely divided.
They were
I
divided.
said a hobby, but that's also like, I just feel like I am in a different spot than people who are, like, getting right out of a school year. So, that I felt like we did definitely had, like, split, where some people
Mhm.
are, like, catch up on the sleep, other people wanted to enjoy, like, something different for their summer.
Now, the best response with that was someone said that they would like to learn a new language and then go to the country
Yeah, that
that
was
speaks that language. That's
that
a
was a good answer.
beautiful, yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Now, I'm going to say this last one, and this was probably the most contentious by Katie Miglin. All right. Would you rather have a summer full of spontaneous adventures with no plans or a meticulous planned summer with activities every day? Katie, what did you say?
I said a summer of spontaneous activities is more of my vibe. Josh disagreed. He said he cannot believe that I would not have things planned. And I said, summer is different. Summer, Katie, is different than the rest of it. And it only goes from like June until August 1st. August 1st, we go back on schedules. So take it or leave it. But this was also very divided, which was kind of surprising. A lot of people were very much like, no, if it's spontaneous, it doesn't happen. I like things
Yep.
planned out, which I do understand and I appreciate that. Like having things on the calendar helps with making sure things actually happen. Like, we're gonna go camping this summer. Put it on the calendar so it happens.
So it's so planned, right?
I mean, yeah, but well,
Yes, I
you didn't answer any of them.
oh, I didn't, and I typically don't.
I
I
know.
am more spontaneous where Leslie, my wonderful wife, is very meticulous in planning. So it's very rare that we just like jump in a car and go somewhere spontaneously. But like for my birthday, we went up to the mountains with my family, found Lost Lake at Mount Princeton. That was not planned that morning. We said, hey, let's go do this because it was something I want to do. So we are spontaneous occasionally. However, because of my type A person or my wife's type A personality, similar to Miss Katie Miglin, then most things are planned prior to. So I would say that 95% of all things that we do as far as our activities and adventures are planned, but occasionally.
This is why Leslie and I
Occasionally.
will be friends, and we'll just deal with you.
You both have to deal with me for sure. All
Mhm.
right. So what we did after this was we opened up the floor for topics for anyone, and we do this occasionally because obviously the admin mastermind is there to support in any way possible and to collaborate with each other. And interview process for teachers was a topic that was asked by many, and so we were jumping into creative questions, in the process of interviews. So Katie, do you remember any creative questions that were used by our admin that you thought were like, you know, really something that you would take to the campus?
Yeah, one of the questions specifically, and I'm glad that we have it written down because it was if you had to rank classroom management,
Mhm.
pedagogy, and relationships, what order would you put them in and why? I thought that was really interesting because I felt like it could shine some light on your candidate. But there were
Yeah,
quite a few questions just with like kids involved. So
yeah,
having kids interview or ask questions or play games, like I did feel like there was a whole like sub conversation around having students involved in the interview process, which I did find super fascinating because that is not something we hear often. It's often very scripted. It's a lot of like the
yeah,
questions that we've all heard. So all of the like conversation on students being involved, I thought was really, really interesting. And I think provided a lot of value because even if you can't have students in your interview for whatever reason, district policy or, school policy, taking some of the things you're trying to get from those pieces, like having they talked about like having kids interact, and did the teacher candidate or staff candidate even ask the student's name, or were they
yeah,
friendly? Asking some of those questions. If you can't necessarily have a student do it, how can you recreate those moments in other ways so that you can really see how that candidate is? Because at the end of the day, that candidate has to interact with students, and that's a very
yeah,
different ball game than sitting at a table with a bunch of adults.
yeah. So we had the pleasure of having a administrator that I had on my campus, and
Yeah.
she was a teacher, and she got to go through the interview process on our campus, and we did this with our teacher candidates of having them go in front of students, and we would provide them the lesson, and it wasn't for a full lesson, but it was a portion, but it just allowed us to get a chance to see them beyond just sitting at a table asking questions and getting their responses. And we had several candidates that said just the most wonderful and beautiful answers, and then we hired them, and then it was just a hot mess express in the classroom, unfortunately. And so we were like, this can't continue. We need to change the process to make sure that whatever they're saying at the table is also what's happening in the classroom. So we switched it up, and so that was how we were able to see them interact and engage with our students, in addition to you know what is the way that they provide the information, and I mean, obviously that's a big priority for us as far as, how they're working with their students in that way. But I want to kind of continue this in regards to student interaction and kind of incorporating them into that interview process. So what were some things that were discussed this morning, Katie, in regards to like how to do that and do it successfully?
Okay, one thing I think I will tell like every administrator I know about is the playing games. So this administrator shared that what they have their candidate do is they have to bring a game. And she said we give very little guidelines as to what the game should be. They have
Yep.
to just come and they just play with a group of students. And there's just one person kind of observing it. And the purpose is to see how they interact with students. Also, like, the type of game can be interesting, especially if it's like not developmentally appropriate, or, is like she gave an example. Someone brought an educational game that like made no sense. And so like that can give you some different perspective too. But then afterwards, she said they talked to the students later and like get the students feel, how was the game? Did they ask questions? And really talk to the students. And I just thought that was such a cool thing to break the ice, to make the candidate feel more comfortable, but also to really see them in their like true element. If you're looking to hire a classroom teacher, you want to see how that teacher is going to interact with students. And teaching a lesson is great, but sometimes they can be too rigid, especially if they're nervous and uncomfortable. And we did talk a lot about that, like whether or not you should have a teacher teach the lesson or maybe talk about the lesson. By having them play a game shows just how they are as a person interacting with like kids and students. And so I don't know, I just think that was such a cool thing to do, something like out of the box thinking that really, showed them what that person is
Mhm.
like. Josh, what stood out for
Yeah.
you?
Well, I think most people, in the chats were talking about like how they had the students, more in a formal setting, sitting down there and asking questions. And I feel like that has occurred for a while. I mean, that was
Yeah.
one of our practices, when we would actually break it up into multi-tiers. So we'd have a student section, we'd have a teacher section, then we'd have an
Mhm.
admin section, right, of an interview. And obviously the higher the position, the more likely those three tiers would occur, especially in admin. Like if we were hiring someone for our admin team, that
Mhm.
would 100% happen. And you can get some insights from that, but I mean, also students sometimes are maybe a little apprehensive. Maybe they don't have the skills to really participate in that way. And I think other admin this morning did state that, where like the game allowed the students to interact and provide kind of an assessment of how the game went and how they interacted with them
Yeah.
as a teacher student relationship, but it's very low level for the student. They don't,
Mhm.
that can be a really stressful thing if they're having to provide interview questions and then have to assess the response from an adult. So I really liked that. The same thing is like when we had a teacher go in and do a lesson, it didn't require the students to do anything. They just had to be themselves, right? And so um, we did ask them for the feedback, but the feedback was based on something that they've experienced every day for quite some time. So again, it
And
was low level. So
sometimes we've like talked about this before, but the lessons are sometimes so inauthentic because the teach like,
mhm,
and we wouldn't necessarily want a teacher to teach like a scripted lesson. We want them to
yeah,
adapt the lesson to the students, to where they're at in their learning, and meet them where they're at. And so when you're asking a teacher candidate to create a lesson without any knowledge, maybe they know the content and the grade, but without really any knowledge of the students, it does make it very, I mean, you can see maybe their teaching ability, but not really. Like if I had to go into a school and teach a lesson and didn't know anything about anything, it would be really tricky for me to feel like
mhm,
I can really teach it well because I'm
right,
missing so much key information. And so
yeah,
just be mindful if you're a school or I guess a district that does that to like be mindful of like, hey, the students might be acting different because they're learning something that maybe is detached from what they're learning on
correct,
the day to day, but also the teacher doesn't know all the things that they would know if they were in charge of those students. And
yep,
so, take it with a little bit of grain of salt of,
for sure,
the authenticness. But like you
yeah,
said, games, like doing a game totally takes all that away. It's
yeah,
everyone can be themselves.
for sure. No,
Yeah.
I thought the game piece was huge. So, Katie, we talked about so many different things with
We
the interview
did.
process. So, I didn't know if you wanted to highlight anything else that came to mind that maybe was, just something that was insightful that you wanted to share with those who missed the meeting today, because I mean, we went all over the place. So, I just want to kind of close with any aha moments potentially on a topic just with the
Yeah.
interview process for teachers.
Like talked about someone said they did lightning round questions with
Mhm.
like some silly questions just to kind of get to know them, make them feel at ease. I always think anything you can do to start an interview or gets the person to kind of relax and get the committee to relax is helpful. We talked about pros and cons of having a scripted, sets of questions. While sometimes that's really valuable because then you're really comparing everyone up against the same questions. Sometimes that is hard to be more authentic and in the moment. So we talked about like a lot of conversations. Can interviews be more conversational based and less like question, answer, question, answer? So I don't know. I just felt like it worked totally at this season. I know I talked to literally 3 administrators just this past weekend, and I was like, "Oh, kids are out of the building. What's your focus? Like, what are you going to be working on?" And they're like, "I have to interview, X number of positions." And
Yeah.
so it's totally this season we're in. So if you have the ability, I think to kind of break the mold a little and try something new, consider it. It is tricky to get students involved in the interview, especially if they're not on campus right now.
Yep.
But if you have, a student leadership team or if you have ambassadors, any of those students, like maybe you can have some of them come in to even answer the door. I thought that was such an
Yeah.
interesting thing. They had like students answer the door and walk them to the office. And then
Yep.
they asked the students later, like, how friendly were they? What they talk about? So if you can do stuff like that, or if you can make it into conversations or, change up your questions, whatever you can do so that you feel like you are getting the best candidates. I think all of those things are super helpful. If you want to talk more in depth, I know Josh and I would love to talk shop with you about how you can look for what you're needing in your campus, because we know every building in every district is different. So I just felt like there was a lot of like little snippets of what people did, to
Mhm.
really look for the best candidate. But there's also just conversation about how it's the pool of candidates is not as big as it once was. So
Oh,
sometimes
for
we have to
sure.
be creative.
Yep. I will say too, someone made a great point at the end about investing time and
Yeah.
making sure that they're calling references, getting the most information about the candidate prior to. And I know it's busy, especially in the fall or not fall, spring, when you're trying to shut down the year, you're trying to get everything done, and then you're also, in addition, trying to find the best candidates to interview. That time is at its essence. And so I would say, though, you're going to invest your time somewhere, either at the front end of it,
Yeah.
trying to get information about the candidate, or on the back end after you hire and potentially having to do a non-renewal with that teacher because of potentially poor performance. So, where do you want to spend your time? And I know
Right.
for me personally, I do not want to go through and do write-ups and do a plan, an action plan for them to improve, and then potentially do a non-renewal for a candidate. I would much rather get that information prior to make sure that they are the best candidates moving forward. So I thought that was a great point that someone made in regards to investing time. So with that, Katie, is there any other thoughts that you got to close things down?
No, if you're watching this right after it gets released and you have ideas for a summer live series that we could do for an admin, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot us a DM, email, whatever. Get the information to us somehow, because
Mhm.
we are looking to just create some live content this summer for our admins specifically. We already have stuff lined up for our educators in the classrooms, but we really want to help any administrator. So if you're kind of sitting in your office watching this and you're like, I want them to talk about this, please drop us a message so that we can get something on the books for you, because we'd love to
For
help
sure.
you as you go into next school year.
Or if you're watching on YouTube, you can throw it in the comments too. We'll
Yeah.
gather those up. That's super simple. For those who are watching, maybe this is the first time that you've seen this. We meet every Tuesday morning. Now, I say that as a caveat that we are going to take a short break. We will be back first week of August on that Tuesday. So Tuesday morning, starting back up in August, 9 a.m. Eastern time. You can head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind. If it's the summertime and you're picking this up and you want to join us in August, this will give you the Zoom link that we will be using for the new year, and it'll get you additional information. We're going to be sending emails out with additional resources and obviously checking in to make sure that we're supporting you. Of course, too, you'll get your Facebook group that we have for our Teach Better Admin Mastermind group, and this is a just area that you can post things in, questions, maybe help other administrators during the summertime. So we'll be continuing the conversation in this space, even though we're not meeting every Tuesday for the summer, but it will ramp back up obviously in August when we come back
Mhm.
together. So you'll get that when you sign up at teachbetter.com/mastermind. You'll get that Facebook group link so you can join us as we're really building that community out. Man,
Yeah.
Katie, I can't believe that we are done with the school year, but I appreciate you. I appreciate your time this morning and joining me for this Admin Mastermind recap.
Yeah. And I'm so excited to go live my spontaneous summer.
Okay, with that, bye, y'all.